Hi boys and girls, happy Tuesday. It is pretty warm outside today. My husband and I went and bought some new plants for the yard this morning, and it's pretty hot out there. So we are about to pick up with The Wild Robot Escapes. We have 6 chapters left plus the epilogue, so I'm going to split it into 2 days. So we have today and tomorrow, and we will be finished with The Wild Robot Escapes, and then I will check out the results from our survey, and it looks like we'll either be reading Charlotte's Web or The Boxcar Children. So I will look at that tomorrow afternoon for the final tally of the votes and decide which book we will be reading next. Okay, here we go. Chapter 85, The Guests. After traveling in secret, after running in fear, our friends were safe at last. But their problems weren't over yet. Although Roz had a brand new body, she had the same old mind. And most humans simply weren't ready for an emotional, curious, wild robot. There was only one place where she could be her true self, and it was still far, far away. Dr. Malavo, you have already been so kind to me and my son, said the robot, but I must ask you for one last favor. The woman sat back in her chair. Could you take us home in your airship? The woman laughed. Well, of course I will. How else would you get to an island in the middle of the ocean? Time and again, Roz had dreamed of flying back to her island in an airship, but she had never thought it would actually happen until now. It's no trouble, the woman went on. We can have you home in a few hours, but I insist that you and Bright Bill stay a while here in my apartment. You both deserve some peace and comfort, and I'd love the company. There was no arguing with Dr. Malavo, and our friends agreed to stay a while. The robot butler took care of everything and everyone in the apartment, and that included guests. Roz felt funny accepting help from a robot, but Bright Bill happily soaked up the attention. The butler fed him fantastic salads made from exotic leafy plants. The butler placed a little pool in the living room so he could swim whenever he liked. The butler built a cozy bed that was just the right size and shape for the young goose. Bright Bill had never been so comfortable. Dr. Malavo divided her time between her guests and her work. She would sit around chatting with Roz and Bright Bill and then suddenly head down to the factory with some urgent task. She had to design new robots. She had to supervise the makers and the recos. She had to manage all of Tech Lab Industries. Even at her old age, Dr. Malavo was still consumed by a passion for robots. If you love your job, it never feels like work. That's very true. She'd say, smiling and strolling out the door. When the host was working, the guests had the apartment to themselves. Roz spent hours browsing the bookshelves. She read about art and science and the history of robotics. Bright Bill waddled from room to room and explored every corner of the sprawling apartment. There's Roz reading some books and Bright Bill swimming in the little pool. But their favorite activity was to stand by the windows, gaze across the city, and survey the incredible sights. I can see the bridge where Strutter tracked me down, said Bright Bill, and that's the building where I first met Graybeak. And there's the roof where you fell. Look, far in the distance, another spaceship is taking off, said Roz. It could be flying to the space station or the moon or beyond. I think that skyscraper is actually a greenhouse, said Bright Bill. I flew past it and saw nothing but plants inside. Roz and Bright Bill enjoyed their time in Dr. Malavo's apartment, but they missed their friends and the wilderness and the island. After a few days, the guests were growing restless. They were ready to go home. Chapter 86, The Flight. Sitting on the pavement, glinting in the sun, was a sleek white airship. For so long, those white ships had filled the robot with dread. Now one was about to solve all her problems. The door hummed open, and Dr. Malavo, Roz, and Brightbill climbed aboard. Once they were comfortable, the woman spoke to the airship. "Take us to the island where Rosum Unit 7134 was found." The engines fired up and the ship lifted off. It floated high into the air, turned to the north, and started cruising above the city. The three of them quietly watched the buildings and streets pass below. The city seemed to go on forever, but as they flew faster and farther, it slowly gave way to towns and countryside. They crossed the hard edge of the coastline, and then there was only the ocean and the sky and the airship. The ocean was deep. However, scattered throughout the dark depths were shallow areas, sandbars, reefs, islands just under the waves. In places, bizarre rock formations stuck up from the shadows. Or were they the ruins of old buildings? The mysterious shapes faded behind the airship and were replaced by more dark depths. The ship flew on and the hours flew by. Gradually, fluffy clouds came into view on the edge of the horizon. Beneath the clouds was a faint smudge of green. The island. It grew closer and bigger, and then Roz was gazing out at all the places she'd missed. The rocky shore, the mountain and the waterfall, the forest and the meadows and the ponds. Air blasted toward the ground as the ship lowered itself into a grassy clearing. It gently touched down. The engines powered off. Look, there they are. Chapter 87, The Homecoming. The airship's door hummed open and our robot stepped outside. Everything was still and silent. But Roz knew hidden animals were watching, and she greeted them with a mighty roar. "Animals of the island, I have returned. I may look different, but I promise you I am your old friend Roz." Her words boomed across the island, but the only response was her own voice echoing back. The wild robot needed to be wilder. So she reached down and started smearing handfuls of mud across her body. Then she pressed clumps of weeds and flowers into her muddy coating until she looked more like her old wild self. Brightbill fluttered out from the airship and perched on Roz's shoulder. He shook his tail feathers and squawked, "It's true, this robot is my mother. Come see for yourselves." Silence. That's all they heard. And then bushes began to rustle. Faces began poking out from the trees. Animals began scurrying and trotting and flying into the meadow. At first they moved cautiously, confused as to how this new robot could be their old friend. But they saw her wild appearance and they heard her wild voice, and news began spreading across the island. Roz was back. A crowd of friendly creatures gathered around our robot. There was Brightbill's flock and the beaver and deer families and Fink the fox and Swooper the owl. Bears came lumbering down from the hills, and fish jumped up from the ponds, and vultures circled above. Even the nocturnal creatures crawled out from their burrows into daylight to join the celebration. Oh, how good it feels to return from a long journey and find your friends and family waiting for you. But reader, sometimes we return to find that things aren't exactly as we left them. As you know, the wilderness can be a harsh place, and while Roz was away, It had claimed its share of her friends. The robot saw the raccoons, Lumpkin and Bumpkin, but not Rumpkin. Nor did she see Broadfoot the moose or Dig Down the groundhog. Other creatures were missing as well. And so, like many of our homecomings, this one was bittersweet. Chit-Chat the squirrel came bounding through the grass, chattering on as usual. I always knew you'd come back to us, Roz, but I never imagined you'd gain so much weight. Although I guess I've gained a little weight myself. Anyway, you'll have to tell me all about your adventures when you get a chance. I'm sorry for talking so much. I'm just so excited to see you again. Geese and beavers and deer and fish and squirrels and owls and bears and turtles and otters and raccoons and woodpeckers and possums and moose and foxes and every kind of creature from every corner of the island were coming to welcome back their dear friends Roz and Bright Bill. And watching it all from the airship was Dr. Malavo. All right, well, we're going to finish up the last few chapters tomorrow, boys and girls, and that will be the end of The Wild Robot Escapes. I have really enjoyed reading those two books with you. Okay, today is Cinco de Mayo, May the 5th, and I really like this one from today. Winners never quit, and quitters never win. That's from Vince Lombardi. So boys and girls, whenever you start something, don't ever quit. You have to work really, really hard. And if it's hard, you just have to work harder. All right, boys and girls. Well, I look forward to finishing up our book tomorrow. One more note, Sunday is Mother's Day, boys and girls. If your mom is there with you, tell her to plug her ears. There are 2 activities that you can work on for Mother's Day with your older brother, sister, aunt, uncle, whoever's with you in the house, so you can keep it a secret from your mom. But there's a card that's in the assignment folder on your class link, and there's also a drawing that is on the daily email slide that I send. I couldn't figure out how to get that in the assignment. So you have 2 things, one in the assignment folder, one on the daily slide, and I think I'm also sending a fun Mother's Day video that you can watch from Discovery Learning. Okay? All right, boys and girls, work hard. I love you.